right, so starting something new can be really difficult. I don't know if you can remember the last time you started something new or tried something new. I can remember when I started to play the guitar. I was 13 years old. In fact, if I remember correctly, I was in middle school and I wanted to really impress girls. So I started to learn how to play guitar, and it worked because, I landed myself a great girlfriend. It took me a couple of years, but, it worked. But learning to play the guitar was a very difficult process. I don't know if you know this, but if you start playing guitar, there's a process that happens with your fingers, because when you have to press your fingers down on those strings, it's painful, okay? And so it's called like callousing, right? You guys have had calluses on your hands before, but just imagine that on your fingertips, okay? So anyone who begins playing guitar, everybody has to go through this process, but a lot of people who start to try to play guitar will quit in this process because it hurts, or it's too painful, or it's like, this isn't worth it, okay? And so they're just like, shelve it and be like, no. But you've got to make it through the difficult thing at the beginning, and then your fingers, they just become numb and you don't feel it anymore, okay? But there's a difficult part of starting that process. There's also another part that's difficult in learning how to play guitar. It's those people who have to listen to you learn how to play guitar, right? And so most of the time they're like moms and dads who have encouraged their kids to learn in their bedroom, right? Because they don't want to hear that process, especially when you try to sing at the same time and strum and everything like that. It can get messy as a 13-year-old, okay? And so that's from my experience, at least. Starting something new can be difficult. Now, I want you to kind of identify with that reality because it's important for us. And so what we're going to talk about tonight is that when you can get past the difficulties of starting something new, you can really reap the benefits of that process, but it's hard at the beginning. Have you ever quit something that you've started? Have you ever found yourself like starting something new, being excited about it, but then it was like just too hard or uncomfortable, and so you quit? I could think of a couple things in my life. One of them was cross country. It's awful. I don't know if I've told you this story before, but I went to cross-country practice one day in high school. I quit after the first day. Sorry, Brian, couldn't make it 32 miles, okay? Quit after the first day. What else have I quit? Diets, I've quit that before. Most recently, being a Colts fan, all those type of things, right? Okay? We've all been there. We know what it's like to quit things because they're too difficult or just to stick with it. But when we talk about our faith, we're talking about starting new habits to move your faith forward, to make it strong. In fact, this is what we started with last week. We wanted you to commit, the idea of committing to your faith. And what that looks like is saying that, man, for so many kids, teenagers, being a part of church, your faith was your parents' idea. But at some level in your relationship with God, it's got to be your idea. It's got to be your decision. It's got to be your commitment. And so that's really what we focused on last week. And so what we're going to talk about tonight is that you can stretch your faith when you start something new, when you take that next step and say, you know what is it for me that I need to start to move my faith forward? So to get there, we're going to talk about a passage, and I need to tell you, because the Apostle Paul wrote this. And so at the end of the Apostle Paul's life, he finds himself, he's writing a second letter, because the first one wasn't enough, to a young guy named Timothy. Timothy was a young church leader. Paul, at this point in his life, is a prisoner. He's found himself in Rome. He's in a dungeon, okay? And so the Emperor Nero has locked him up. He's sick of Paul preaching the gospel. He says, enough of that. He sticks him in this basement. And while he's there, Paul writes some letters. And one of the things that he writes is to Timothy. It's a second letter because Paul knows he's getting close to the end of his life. And in fact, not too long after he writes this, Nero's going to chop off his head and Paul's dead. I mean, that's what happens. And so he writes this knowing that, man, he's a prisoner and he's facing execution soon. And so he says, Timothy, this letter, because he expects Timothy to move the faith forward. He expects Timothy to carry on the torch. He expects him to take some leadership within the church in spreading the gospel throughout the known world. And so he writes this letter to him. And so this is what he says, 2 Timothy chapter 1, verses 5 through 7. It's going to be on the screen. I want you to follow along with me. Paul writes, he says, I remember your genuine faith, for you share the faith that first filled your grandmother, Lois, and your mother, Eunice. And I know that same faith continues strong in you. This is why I remind you to fan into flames the spiritual gift God gave you when I laid my hands on you. For God has not given us a spirit of fear and timidity, but of power and love and self-discipline. Now, this is a really powerful verse, and it's a significant one, and maybe you've heard this before, but tonight I want to use it as the basis for what we're going to talk about when we talk about starting something new. But Paul uses a very interesting phrase here. He says, fan into flames the spiritual gift that God gave you. It's an interesting way that Paul writes this, but when we understand what he means by this, it has serious implications for all of us. And so first we have to understand that Paul prefaced all of this. If you go back to that verse real quick, he prefaced all of this under this, that Timothy has strong faith. Okay, so he says, I remember the faith that you have from your grandmother and your mother, and that faith continues strong in you. So he recognized that Timothy has this strong faith. Now, the question that I want you to consider as we start this is, would you consider your faith to be strong? I don't know how you want to define that, and I don't want to have to define that for you, but I want you to think about that. Would you consider your faith to be something strong? That if someone that knew you well were going to write you a letter about church leadership and your role, they would say, you know what? I know that you have a strong faith. Would that be something that you would ascribe to yourself? Because that's what Paul prefaced what he says next, is that, Timothy, I know that your faith is strong. And so last week we talked about committing to our faith. That's one of the ways that you can make your faith strong, by committing to it. So Paul uses this word in the Greek. I don't try to talk to you about Greek words a whole lot, but sometimes they're important. And the word that he uses for faith, Timothy's faith in the Greek, which is what was originally written in, is pistios. In the Greek it means, it's translated as faith, but when you get to the root of the word, what it means is warranty. And so if you think of that, right, you've all seen like the little things on social media, like, I've been trying to reach you about your car's extended warranty and all that kind of stuff, right? Someday you'll know what that's like, right? Someone's always reaching out to you about a warranty. But the idea of a warranty is this idea that, you can trust in the warranty. You should be able to. You should trust that, if something goes wrong, well, I've got a warranty, right? I've had to use warranties before with like appliances, like my refrigerator. And so it's like, well, I've got a warranty on it, so they'll come and fix it. So I was like, I wasn't stressed. I wasn't worried. This is the word that he uses about his faith. That his faith isn't necessarily this outward expression, right? Or it's like, man, Timothy from the outward is like, has this strong faith, but it's this inward warranty, this belief, this trust, this confidence in who God is, what he's all about, and what he will do. That's what he says. I know that you have this strong faith, this belief, this trust in God. And so because of that, and that's the foundation for everything that we're talking about, the strong faith. And if you believe that you have a faith, even if you wouldn't characterize it as strong, maybe you think it's like semi-strong, right? If you have this faith in God, this is what he says next. So he says, because of his faith, Paul says, fan into flames the spiritual gift God gave you. Here's what he means by this. This is a metaphor, but it implies that there is a need of exertion on the part of the one who has the gift to bring it into full expression, right? There is a responsibility on the behalf of the person who has the gift. Other versions translate it like this. Instead of fan the flames, he says, kindle afresh or keep ablaze, okay? I want you guys to understand what Paul is trying to say here, because when you start a fire, you think of like ancient term, right? Like first century type thing. When you start a fire, you don't have a lighter, okay? Now we have lighters or gasoline. It's not that hard to start a fire, right? But you used to gotta rub the sticks together and, blow on the smoke. Has anybody ever done that? Maybe some Boy Scouts or something like that? No? Raise your hand if you've ever started a fire without a lighter. One person? Two people? Okay. It's not a popular thing to do because there's easier ways to do it, but in the first century, as Paul's writing this is the idea, right? When you start a fire, you've got to fan the flame, okay? You've got to put some, you have a responsibility that once it's lit, once you've started it, to really get it to kindle and get it to what you want it to do, you have a responsibility to do something. This is what Paul says about the gifts that you have. He says, if you've been given a gift, the responsibility that you have is to fan it into flames. You have a responsibility to exert some energy to make sure that your gift has its full expression. This is what Paul is trying to talk about here. And so you have a responsibility to make it grow. Here's what I want all of us to understand tonight. God has given you a gift. God has uniquely made each and every one of you. God has put something inside of you. I don't know what it is. For some of you, I do. I can see it. I bet your small group leader can see it in you. They could tell you, even if you don't know what it is yourself. Some of you, because I've been in your seat before, be like, what am I good at? What is my gift? I don't know. I'm not good at anything. But God has made you with something. He's uniquely designed you for some type of role, some type of influence in this world for him. And it's your responsibility to fan that into flames, to bring out the expression of the gift that God has put inside of you. So even if you can't see it in yourself, maybe someone else can speak it into you, show you maybe how God has wired you and gifted you, but it's our responsibility. 1 Peter chapter 4, just to remind you, to show you that this is true, Peter writes this, God has given each of you a gift from his great variety of spiritual gifts. Use them well to serve one another. Right? This is the idea. Because of that truth, and it is true, that each of us have a gift, you have a responsibility to make it grow. Okay? You have a responsibility. And so what I want to talk to you about tonight is one of the best ways for you to get your gift in expression, to make it grow, is this idea to maybe start something new. To stretch your faith, to move your faith forward by starting something new to either expose your gifts to yourself or to help you live them out. And so I want to spend the rest of our time just being real practical and talking about a few things that honestly, listen, if you're a little bit older, or if you're one of the people that are here every week, some of this stuff's gonna be a little basic, okay? And so you might be tendency just to like not pay attention as much as you usually do, because you usually always pay attention. But, I want you to really consider of any of the things that I talk about, what's something for you, okay? Not everything that I'm gonna talk about next is gonna be, I don't want you to write you could write every single thing down, but don't feel like every single thing that I say is what you have to go home and start. I'm looking for you to choose one that pulls your heart, one that tugs on you and says, man, that's what I need. That's what I need to do, okay? That's what I want you to look for here. So to start something new, here's the idea, is that you start something new that will bring you closer to God, okay? January, great time of year to do this. Start something new that can bring you closer to God, because this isn't a cookie cutter approach. Every single one of you are at a different place in your life and in your faith. And so I can't sit here and tell you one thing that you need to start or need you to do, but I can give you some ideas. Maybe it can help you. Maybe something I say, maybe it's something I don't say that moves your mind in the direction of what you can do. So here's some ideas. Again, they're simple. They're not rocket science. First one is to read your Bible. My guess is that in a room this size, the majority of us in here do not read our Bible as much as we know that we should. That's going to be the assumption that I'm working under. I also assume that there are people in here that read that you've got this, you've done this, you're working on this, okay? So just realize I'm speaking to both sides. But for many of us, we're at a place, probably find ourselves at a place where I'm like, I know I should read the Bible, and I kind of want to, but it's like, I haven't found what works for me or how to do this in a way that I enjoy it. So let me give you some ideas to do this. First, and they're all different, and so don't think that you have to do all of these. The first one is to use the actual real physical Bible. One of the things I find the most joy in is I have a Bible that I use for study. I've had this Bible, I looked in it this week. I've had this Bible since 2001. I can imagine that's before you were born, right? I'm old, okay? So my parents gave me this Bible, I think when I was, that would have been as I was heading into high school, okay? So 2001, my parents gave me this Bible, and I've had it ever since. That's the main Bible that I do. One of the greatest joys that I have is that I use this Bible and I highlight things. I write things in the margins of it. And so as I'm reading or as I've read different things, I highlight things and I can go back and see different things that have stuck out to me at different times. Or sometimes I'm like, why did I highlight that? And it makes me to try to jog my memory. But regardless, sometimes when I find myself looking for inspiration, it's just easy for me to flip through my real physical Bible, and things are already highlighted in there for me to see how God has spoken to me in the past. Maybe that's something for you. Maybe for too long you've relied on the digital world and you're just like, well, maybe you need to actually pick up a real Bible and be like, this is the one, this is what I'm going to read. Just an idea. So here's the second idea. It's going to be on the other side. Use the Bible app, okay? So because everybody's different. I assume, I'm going to make an assumption that's probably not true, but I hope that you have the Bible app on your phone or your tablet or something that you use, because it's a great tool and it's a great resource. In there, you can find plans that you can go through. You can have friends. You can see when your friends are highlighting and finishing plans, right? So one of the cool things for me is when I get into the Bible app and I see like all these guys or some and girls too that are highlighting verses or have completed a plan or are working on it, and it just shows me and encourages me, man, I should read too, or I need to continue in this because I see people that are my friends or some of you that are reading, and it creates some accountability within me. So find the plans, add some friends in there, use the Bible app. Pick up a devotional of any type. I don't even care what it is, but something that if you've ever felt like, man, I want to read the Bible, but I don't know where to start. Maybe I should start at Genesis. Maybe I should start in a gospel. And you just find yourself reading, but you don't know how to apply any of it. Maybe you should pick up a devotional, and there's plenty of great resources. Ask your small group leader. If they're stumped, they can ask me, and we'll be happy to help you find something that you could order on Amazon and have within a week and start a devotional, someone that you can read to help you as you read the Bible. And then the last thing I would say about the Bible app is just to, I hope you guys know this, you could do plans with friends. You guys know this, right? And so if you want to do a plan, you can invite 3 or 4 or 5, your whole small group, into a plan, and you can read it together. And then at the end of each day, you could comment and add your own thoughts and different things like that. It's a great thing that you can do together. 2 other things about reading your Bible I want to mention. Number 1, if you find yourself struggling, set a time. Set a time that you can do this, that you can set aside. If you've got a real physical Bible, that's really important because you want to make sure you have it. But number 2, one of the great things about having the Bible app is that you could do it anytime. You could do it on the bus. You could do it when you're laying in bed because you've got your phone with you all the time, right? And so you could literally do this at any time. But set a time, at least until this becomes a habit, that you read. And then the last thing I'll say, because I know that it's true and it's always going to be true, is if you find accountability, it will help you. Choose a friend. Find someone that says, man, because if you choose somebody in here, like you'd have a real bad friend in here. If someone in here, if you say to them, hey, I want to read my Bible, can you help me? And they say, no, I'm not interested, right? Okay, tell your small group leader, all right, we'll get them in trouble or something like that, okay? But they're going to say yes, or they're probably going to say this, man, you know what? I need help too. Yes, I'd love to. If you have that desire, find some accountability. Ask someone to help you. Ask someone to keep you accountable. And I promise you, if you take that step, it's going to reap rewards in your life, okay? So let me move on. Number 2, again, groundbreaking stuff, to pray. Pray. Read your Bible, pray. Those are 2 Sunday school answers. But maybe to start something new, to move your faith forward, you need to actually spend time praying to God. And if your prayers over the course of a week consist of this, praying before meals, praying the same routine prayer before you go to bed, or only praying when your small group leader calls on you, like you're missing out. You're not doing it right. And maybe you need some help. But if you want to move your faith, you want to stretch your faith, you actually need to spend time with God. So here's some ideas. Maybe in the light of talking about accountability, one of the things that you could do is try to choose somebody and say, can we just pray together once a week, right? To actually pray out loud with somebody could really move your faith forward. Here's the second idea is in light of journaling, because we've talked about that before, and I don't expect a whole lot of people to pick up on that, but maybe just write out some bullet points of things to pray for. I don't know if you've ever started praying, and in the middle of it, you start thinking about something else. Be honest, right? Okay? We've all been there. You start praying in your mind, and then all of a sudden you say, man, what's mom making for dinner? Okay? Or you just start thinking about something else, and all of a sudden you're just like out there in the middle of nowhere, and you're like, what was I praying about? Or should I just say amen at this point, right? And so we've all done that, and we've been there. We know what it's like. And so one of the things that can help you with that is before you pray, just write, even if it's just 5 things, say, I'm gonna pray for my family, I'm gonna pray for my game this weekend, I'm gonna pray for my friend Jessica. You just write some things out, and it could just keep you on task, okay? That's my encouragement for you. The last thing I'll say about prayer is this. Give yourself the space to do it right. I think oftentimes when we talk about prayer, we rush ourselves into it. We view it as a task. We think that it's just one of the things that we're supposed to do. Put yourself in the right mindset. Give yourself space to breathe. Give yourself a space to listen to what God wants for you. Okay? And then the last thing I'll say is worship. Let me do these real quickly because I do have some other things I'm going to say. Maybe a thing to stretch your faith forward is just for you to actually worship when you're here or when you're at church, to participate. Maybe a way that you could worship is what you choose to listen to. All of you got headphones, and at different times you're listening to music on the bus or in the car or as you're working out or something like that. Maybe what you listen to can be an opportunity for you to worship. And if you want to move your faith forward, maybe you set a podcast aside, maybe you set the country music aside, and you say, you know what, I just need a little bit more worship in my life. Maybe it's something that you could do. And then the last thing, which goes along with prayer a little bit, is just find a little bit of silence in your life. That can be a way to worship. All right, so here's the second idea. I got to do this real quickly. Number 2 is you can start something new that will benefit somebody else. Remember this verse that we just read from 1 Peter chapter 4? It says, God has given you a gift from his great variety of gifts. Use them well to serve one another. So not only are these gifts meant for you to have something special that God has given you, but he wants you to use it to help other people. And so there's a whole lot of ways to do that, but let me just talk about one tonight, is just to serve here at our church, to be a part of what we're doing in our community. There's a whole lot of ways to do this. Number 1, raise your hand if you help serve in Bibleopolis. That's one of the things you do, okay? See, a whole bunch of people in here already do that on a weekly basis or on a monthly basis. You're serving young kids and doing that on a Sunday morning or Saturday night. That's a great thing to do. Our Impact Center, I know all of us have probably, maybe not all of us, many of us have been over there at some point to do something. If you really want to be a part of the Impact Center and serving people in need in our community, you can go on a Thursday night, you can go on a Saturday morning and help serve food or clothes, or just be the hands and the feet of Jesus to the people in that place. That could be an opportunity for you. You could be a greeter at church. You could go to one of our impact sites. There's a lot of ways to do that. But whatever you decide to do, let me close with this. Whatever you decide to do, start small. Start small. Choose one thing, and choose one step tonight to move your faith forward. Because if you don't ever do this, if you don't ever decide to start something new, you're not going to move your faith forward. There's 2 things that I love about my job. There's 2 things I really care about. And you could probably pick up on this, but all the times I talk to you and all that kind of things, there's 2 things that I really, really want out of what I do. Number 1 is I want you to have a real, genuine, and authentic relationship with Jesus. I don't want it to be something that you just come to church or that this is what my family does. I want you to have a real, genuine, authentic relationship with Jesus. And number 2, I want you to experience the joy and to feel the urgency to share your faith with your friends. You will never have a better mission field of sharing your faith than what you do right now. And I want you to feel the urgency, the importance of sharing your faith with the people around you who need to know Jesus. And to get to those 2 things, I need you to consider to start something new in your life to move your faith forward. You can stretch your faith by starting something new. That's what it comes down to.